Hello class, welcome to our presentation on class osteichthyes, also known as bony fish, by myself, Courtney Smith, and Parker Yingling, which you will see in later slides. To start off, we have a do now. So the do now is, have you ever tried fish before? And if you have, what type of fish? Good answers, good answers. So to start, we have the diversity. So there are about 23,000 different types of bony fish. And then there's two major groups. You have the lobe fin fish, which as you can see here, there's a long bone going through the fin with the little rays coming out, or I should say little bones. And then you have the ray fin fish, which means the fin supported by long segmented flexible bony elements called rays. As you can see in here, we have one large bone and then these segmented bones coming out. Next we have the evolutionary link. So the first appearance in fossil records was the jawless fish, which was the oldest vertebrate fossils found. They were also found a little over 500 million years ago. This is not an exact picture of the fish that was found, but it would look very similar with all the different bone structures. Next we have the skin. So I'm sure you've seen fish before. They have a scaly kind of skin, as you can see here. There's thin, round discs and of a bone-like material, so they're very hard. They grow from pockets in the skin, and then it protects the fish and helps to reduce water resistance. Because of the way that they grow, they overlap each other, so it's very hard for water to get into the skin. Then we have the skeleton. So the composition of the skeleton is it's made of a skull, spinal column, pectoral girdle, pelvic girdle, and ribs. The spinal column is made up of many bones called the vertebrae. Specifically, we have the pectoral girdle, which is the attachment point for the pectoral fins. As you can see here, right here is the pectoral fins, and then the bone connecting it to the rest of the skeleton is the pectoral girdle, and then same with the pelvic girdle, it's the attachment point for the pelvic fins. So the pelvic fins are right here, and the pelvic girdle is the bone that is connecting it to the rest of the skeleton. Next, we have the feeding and digestion. So they have a digestive tract made of the mouth, which their jaw is lined with sharp teeth pointed inward to prevent prey from escaping. And then into the pharynx, which is the throat cavity, to the esophagus, to the stomach, to the intestine, and then any undigested material is eliminated through the anus. We're going to come back to this slide then. So right here is a picture of the fish, and basically any food goes into the mouth, and then here's the pharynx, and then this would be right here. This is the esophagus, and then it goes into the stomach, into the intestine, and then out the anus. And then going back, we have three structures. We have the liver, which secretes bile, which helps break down the fats of the food. And we have the gallbladder, which stores the bile and releases it into the intestine. And the pancreas, which releases digestive enzymes into the intestine to help digest the food.
Hi class, I'm Parker Yingling. Thank you, Courtney, for getting us through that first half of this presentation, and I'm going to go ahead and finish this out. So let's talk about respiration. So the gills, where water will flow into the mouth and be pumped over the gills. You can see in this picture here, the water's going in the mouth, over the gills, and away from the gills. And then we have the operculum, where water will exit the operculum after flowing over the gills. And then finally the countercurrent flow, which water will flow away from the head and blood will flow towards the head, which allows more oxygen to diffuse into the gills rather than if the blood and water were going into the same direction. Let's talk the circulatory system. So the heart structure, there are 4 chambers in a row. We have the sinus venosus, the atrium, muscular ventricle, and conus arteriosus. And then there's also circulation loops. So the heart will pump blood through arteries to capillaries, which are small, thin-walled vessels. Blood picks oxygen up and releases carbon dioxide, and blood will travel to the body tissues and then return to the heart through veins. And you can see here just a picture of the structures of the heart and the circulatory system. Alright, next up we have excretion. We're going to start off with the kidney and bladder. Urine's going to be carried from the kidneys to the urinary bladder, where it's going to be stored for a later time to be released. Then we have the difference between saltwater and freshwater fish. The saltwater fish are going to make up for water loss by releasing little urine and drinking seawater, which this will increase internal concentration of sodium and chloride ions, whereas freshwater fish will produce large amounts of urine. This gains water and loses ions. Now we'll go through the nervous system, where the vision will come with the optic tectum, which receives information based on their vision. Smell, they have an olfactory bulbs, which process smell. Then the lateral line, which allows fish to detect pressure gradients. And finally the brain structure, which contains some of the major sensory organs. And we can see there is the forebrain, which includes the cerebrum, the midbrain, which is behind the forebrain and contains the optic tectum, then the hindbrain, which is behind the midbrain and contains the cerebellum. And here you can see just a picture of some of these major organs, major sensory organs. It's a good view of what we're looking at. So here we go. So for reproduction, we have 2 kinds of fertilization. We have external fertilization, where the eggs and sperm are going to be released through the anus, and then internal fertilization, where the male will insert sperm into the female. Then we have parental care, which the female will carry the eggs in the body until they are born, and then some will build crude nests for the spawn. Here we can see a picture of the female laying eggs and then the male going to fertilize them. Okay, so for flotation, we have a swim bladder, which is a thin-walled sac that's gonna contain, in the abdominal cavity, it's going to contain a mixture of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen. And then specifically the lobe-finned fish has an adaptation to life on land, where it's going to burrow into the mud and cover themselves with mucus to stay sort of wet and damp when the ponds dry up. So here we have some external features. I'm going to try and bring this a little closer so you can see it better. Over on the left here we have the mouth, the eye, then going into the operculum, this pectoral fin, and then underneath we have the pelvic fin, the anal fin. In the middle here you can see that lateral line, and then up top we have the dorsal fins, both anterior and posterior, and then the caudal fin at the back. Next we have some of this internal anatomy, which I'm going to do same thing and bring you a little closer. We have the operculum, the gills, the two-chambered heart, the intestine down here at the bottom, the stomach where the intestine leads up to, the sex organs towards the back, and then finally at the back there's the anus. It's going to show again that lateral line right in the middle. This blue sac is the air sac or the swim bladder, and then right above that is the kidney, the spinal cord more towards the front, and then the esophagus as well up towards that area, a little lower, and then the brain up towards the head there, and then finally it does show that fin again up top. That's all we have today for this presentation on the bony fish. Thank you again, Courtney, for doing the first half of this presentation. I hope, class, that you've learned all there is to know about the bony fish.